Beneath the unforgiving gray sky of winter, Alira pressed her gloved hand against the frost-kissed bark of an ancient tree. Her breath billowed in small clouds, disappearing as quickly as they formed. Snow crunched beneath her boots, and with every step deeper into the woods, the cold clung tighter to her bones. This was the Hollowed Vale, a forgotten place that whispered warnings through the brittle branches, warnings she had learned to ignore long ago. The frost didn't bother her anymore. Not since the day she first touched the Heartshard. The jewel pulsing softly at her breastplate, cold, blue, and veined with silver, was both her shield and her curse. It hummed when danger was near, and now it beat a faint, urgent rhythm against her skin. "Alira," came a low voice behind her. She turned without surprise. Kale, tall and grim, emerged from the trees. Snow speckled his dark cloak, and his sword hilt glinted like the crescent moon behind cloud. "We're being followed," he said. "I know," she replied, fingers tightening over the Heartshard. "They've been pacing us since the ridge." Kale's brows drew together. "You should have said something. I wanted to see how close they'd get." From behind them came the crack of ice breaking under weight, soft, then sharper, like glass splintering. A shadow moved through the trees. Then another. Kale unsheathed his blade, and Alira moved slightly to his left, falling into the practiced dance of readiness. 2 years of war had taught them to fight like mirrors, every movement precise, predictable, lethal. But there was no attack. Only watching. "They're not bandits," Kale muttered. "Too quiet." "No," Alira agreed. "They're wardens." He stiffened. "From the Citadel?" She nodded once. "Sent by my father, no doubt. He finally knows I'm alive." Kale glanced at her, his jaw tightening. "Then we run." "No," she said, already walking toward the figures. "We talk." Kale grabbed her wrist. "He sent them to bring you back, Alira. Or kill you." The Heartshard pulsed again, 2 beats, steady. It did not sense immediate threat. "They won't kill me," she said, pulling away. "He still needs me. The shard won't let him rule without my blood." Kale cursed softly under his breath, but followed. They emerged into a small clearing ringed with skeletal trees. 3 wardens stood waiting in silver armor etched with the symbol of the High Flame, Alira's house. All 3 lowered their hoods as she approached, revealing pale faces marked by ash sigils and loyalty. The woman in the center stepped forward. Her eyes were a shade too bright, like polished steel. "Princess Alira." "I'm not a princess," Alira replied, her voice even. "Not anymore. You're needed at the Citadel." Alira tilted her head. "The Citadel needs a weapon. That's why you came." The woman didn't answer, but her silence was louder than any confirmation. "You tell my father," Alira said, voice low, "that I am not his Heartshard puppet. I left because I saw what he'd become, and what he turned me into." Another warden spoke, a man with a scar that split his lip. "He'll burn the Vale to ash looking for you." "Let him," she said. "The Vale has survived worse kings." The wardens didn't draw weapons, not yet. But Kale remained poised, a blade's breadth from striking. "You'll have to make a choice, Alira," said the woman. "Either you return willingly, or we bring back what's left of you." The shard flared hot against her chest. That was warning enough. Kale's blade was already swinging when the first warden moved. Steel met steel with a thunderous clash, shattering the stillness. Alira turned, arms sweeping, drawing frost from the ground like mist. The Heartshard surged, unleashing a wave of ice that cracked the earth beneath the warden's feet. 2 fell. The third, the woman, was quick, dodging to the side and drawing twin daggers. "Run," Kale shouted. But Alira didn't. She stood firm as the warden lunged. Her hand shot out, and the shard's power answered. A wall of ice erupted between them, stopping the blade inches from her face. The warden stumbled back, panting, her gaze now uncertain. "You've grown stronger," she said. "Too strong." Alira stepped through the melting frost. "And I'm just beginning." The woman backed away slowly, eyes never leaving Alira's. Then she disappeared into the trees without a word. Kale moved to her side, blood on his blade, breath shallow. That's just the beginning, isn't it? She looked toward the north, toward the place she had sworn never to return. They won't stop, Kale. Not until they have me or the shard. He wiped the blade clean. Then we don't stop either. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the wind threading through the trees. But Alira's thoughts churned. Her father had finally acted. And if he was desperate enough to send wardens into the Vale, he was desperate enough to awaken the other shards. The ones lost. The ones broken. The ones that could end the world. She touched the gem at her chest, now cold and quiet. They would need allies. They would need to reach the northern tribes, the ancient archives. And they would need to move before winter swallowed the roads. She turned to Kale, her voice steady. We leave at dawn. He nodded once, and in the trees behind them, something unseen began to stir. The snow fell heavier as they descended from the Vale's ridgeline into the broken lands. The terrain had once been fertile, but now it lay scarred, blackened veins of old fire tracing through the ice. Trees turned to ash-twisted sentinels. Kale kept his hood low and his sword hand free. Beside him, Alira moved with purpose, yet her silence was weightier than any storm. They hadn't spoken much since the warden encounter. Some truths didn't need repeating. It wasn't until they reached the frozen river that she stopped. She crouched near the bank, brushing away a film of frost with her gauntlet. The sigil beneath the ice shimmered faintly, a glyph carved into the earth, older than any kingdom. Kale stepped closer. Another ward? Alira nodded. One of ours. Before everything. My mother etched them when I was a child, places of binding. He looked at her, brow creasing. Binding what? Alira didn't answer immediately. Her fingers hovered over the glyph, and the Heartshard pulsed once, reacting to the residual magic beneath. She whispered a phrase in the old tongue. The ice cracked around the symbol, but did not break. When the shards were scattered, she said slowly, not all fell to silence. Some adapted, some corrupted. My mother feared what they'd become, what they could awaken if left unchecked. Kale knelt beside her, studying the mark. You think your father's hunting them? I know he is. Her eyes lifted, distant. The wardens weren't sent only to retrieve me. They were scouting, mapping the glyphs, testing if I'd unlocked any. And have you? Alira looked away. Not yet. A howl rose in the distance, thin, not quite human. Both stood at once, their hands finding weapons instinctively. They're closer than we thought, Kale muttered. Too close, Alira agreed. They pressed on, the terrain growing more treacherous. Twisted remnants of old battlefields bled through the snow, shattered helms, scorched banners, bones half swallowed by frost. A memory of war echoed in every step, though nothing living stirred. At least, not yet. When they reached the remnants of Stonewell, a village razed long ago, they found the central square nearly untouched by snow, as though something had recently passed through and disturbed the cover. Alira crouched again, pressing her palm to the ground. The Heartshard flared unbidden. Here, she whispered. He's already touched this place. Kale scanned the shadows between ruined homes. Your father?
No.
Worse. A cold wind shrieked through the hollow buildings, scattering ash and ice like brittle paper. Then, from the far side of the square, a figure stepped into view. Cloaked in bone-white fabric, face obscured, yet unmistakably not warden. Alira stepped forward. You have no place here. The figure cocked its head, curious rather than threatened. When it spoke, its voice was layered, one tone atop another, as if two entities shared the same mouth. You hold the shard, Alira. That alone grants us invitation. Kale raised his blade. Speak your name. I have none, the figure replied. But you may call what I am a simmer. Alira's breath caught. The word twisted something in her chest, something old and half-remembered from her mother's stories. The simmer were myths, creatures whispered to be remnants of failed shard bondings. Not alive.
Not dead.
Dangerous. What do you want? She asked. The figure stepped closer. The ground beneath its feet blackened. You've awakened the first binding, it said. The pulse called us. Others are stirring. Not just the king. Not just the fools who serve him. Alira drew her weapon. Elegant, ice-forged steel etched with runes. The blade shimmered with latent frost. Then we'll silence them. The simmer tilted its head again. So certain. So much like your mother. She thought she could hold the shards. Contain them. And yet here we are, repeating the cycle. Kale moved to her side. Enough. But the creature made no move to attack. It only raised one pale hand, revealing a piece of cloth, torn, embroidered with the crest of the northern tribes. Alira's eyes narrowed. Where did you get that? They reached for fire and found something colder, the simmer said. The northern outposts have fallen. Their voices silenced. You're too late, heartbound. A surge of pain bloomed in Alira's chest, sharp, personal. The northern tribes had guarded one of the last untouched shard seals. If it was compromised, her grip tightened. You lie. Do I? The simmer said, already retreating into mist. Then go north. See what grows from the snow. And then it vanished, dissipating like smoke. Kale's breath was visible. Too fast. Do we follow it? No, Alira said. Her voice was hollow. We go north. He stared at her. Even if it's true, if they've taken the seal, then we stop them from taking the next. For a long moment, neither spoke. Snow began to fall again, thick and heavy. Finally, Kale sheathed his sword. Then we move now. Alira turned away from the ghost town of Stonewell, but her thoughts remained there, tangled in the name Simmer, in the warnings it carried. They weren't just racing her father anymore. The rules of the hunt had changed. And something older, something deeper than ambition or politics, was beginning to wake. The wind howled across the northern steppes, dragging sheets of snow like torn banners across the frozen wastes. Alira moved at a steady pace, each breath a cloud of vapor, each step crunching over a silence, so complete it bordered on sacred. The world here felt untouched, yet there was an undercurrent of wrongness beneath the calm, like breath drawn too deep before a scream. Kale trudged beside her, his cloak rimed with frost. He hadn't spoken in hours. Neither had she. Words felt like disruptions in a land that remembered death. They crested a ridge near dusk, and there it was, what remained of the northern seal. Alira stopped. Where once had stood a temple of stone and pine, only a crater remained, rimmed by jagged ice and scorched earth. The glyph stones were shattered. The air above the ruin shimmered faintly, like heat rising from a battlefield. She dropped to her knees without realizing it. Kale crouched beside her, silent, his jaw clenched. They broke it. She touched the ground. It was warm, unnaturally so. No trace of snow dared settle here. They didn't just break it, she murmured. They harvested it. He frowned. What does that mean? She looked up, eyes cold with dread. Shard forging. They're fusing the raw power into living vessels. Kale inhaled sharply. That's forbidden. It's impossible, she corrected. Or it should have been. The snow around the crater began to shift. Kale rose instantly, hand on his blade. Alira followed, already drawing the heart shards chill into her palm. Magic coiled beneath her skin, instinctive now, a language her body spoke without thought. A figure rose from the snow. No cloak, no armor. Bare-skinned, even in this brutal cold, and utterly still. Male, perhaps once human, but changed. His eyes burned with pale blue fire, and veins of light pulsed across his flesh, like cracked marble. Alira took a step forward. Can you speak? The creature blinked. Its mouth moved, but no sound emerged. Then, slowly, painfully, it opened its palm. Etched into the skin was a seal. Her family's crest. Kale swore. Another experiment. Alira held out her hand, projecting calm. I don't think he's hostile. The heart's hard pulsed once, steady. The creature cocked its head, as if confused by her voice. When it took a step toward her, Kale moved between them instantly. No closer. Elira gently touched Kale's arm. Let him. The being stopped an arm's length away. For a moment, nothing passed between them but breath and snowfall. Then, as if drawn by a force neither of them understood, Elira reached out and touched his chest. A flood of sensation erupted in her mind. Not words, memories. Screaming.
Chains. Fire.
A circle of masked figures. A shard, red and raw, forced into a vessel that rejected it. Pain, more pain, until identity fractured into instinct. Then, darkness. Elira staggered back, eyes wide. Kale caught her. What did you see? Too much, she whispered. They're not just testing on prisoners. They're trying to build something stable. Something permanent. The creature stepped back, lowering its gaze. There was a flicker of shame in that small motion, a hint that something human still lingered beneath the ruin. Elira steadied herself. I don't think he chose this. Can we help him?
Kale asked.
I don't know. A low rumble interrupted her answer, a vibration in the ground, deep and growing. The snow shuddered, sliding from ledges, and from the far end of the crater, several dark forms emerged. More vessels. Unlike the first, these radiated aggression. Jagged shards jutted from their limbs, mouths stitched shut, eyes glowing with an unholy fire. They moved as one. Kale drew steel. These don't look confused. Elira stepped in front of him, raising her arm. Ice spiraled outward in sharp arcs as the heart's heart ignited in her chest. Frost gripped the air, thickening into blades. The first creature reached them, leaping. Kale's blade met it midair in a flash of sparks and blood. The next two were hers. Elira launched a wave of frost that slammed into them, freezing limbs mid-motion, locking one in a twisted stance. But it didn't stop. It shattered the ice and kept coming. She gritted her teeth and forced more power through the shard. Her veins burned cold. The sky itself seemed to bend as she called upon every ounce of control she possessed. With a cry, she drove her hand into the snow, and the ground answered. Ice erupted from the crater's edges in a burst of crystalline spikes, piercing one vessel clean through the torso. Another stumbled, howled, then fell into the rift. The first creature, the half-human, stood aside the whole time unmoving, watching. When the last of the attackers lay still, silence returned. Kale leaned on his blade, panting. That's 3. How many more do you think they've made? Elira didn't answer. She turned back to the creature, the one who had tried to remember who he was, and looked him in the eye. We're going to stop them, she said. And if there are more like you, if any still have minds, we'll save them. The creature bowed its head slightly, almost imperceptibly. Then it stepped back into the snow, retreating into the white. Kale approached her side. We can't fight an army of those. I know, she said. But we don't have a choice. If they unlock the last seal, if they forge the prime shard, none of this will matter. He touched her shoulder. Then we need help. Real help. The old bloodlines. The deep allies. She nodded slowly. The Covenant still exists. Even if only in name. It's time we call them back. They stood at the edge of the ruin, snow falling like ash around them, the wind carrying the echo of what had begun. Behind them lay a broken seal. Ahead, war. But for the first time in years, Elira didn't feel alone.